for this year, we're calling on club members, but what is most important that about Doc is that he's going to give us some insights as to how in the heck we can only have 18 days of inventory um, on our real estate rolls. So with that, Doc, and I hope you have a joke because it is Christmas. And without further ado, Doc is going to talk to us about real estate in Clallam County.
Yeah, well, thank you. Before I get into the presentation, there is the joke about the guy who goes to the dentist because he's having a problem with his denture. And the dentist looks it over and says, well, your denture is corroding. Have you changed diet or something? And the guy says, well, my wife's in this French cooking class, so we're getting a lot of, sauces. There's Béarnaise and Hollandaise and, Mornay. And the dentist says, well, that's probably it. I mean, a lot of those sauces, they have a lot of lemon, a lot of acid. That's probably what's doing it. I tell you what, we'll rebuild the denture and we'll make the plate out of chrome. The guy says, chrome? Isn't that a little heavy? Dentist says, well, yeah, but there's no plate like chrome for the Hollandaise. Yeah, I know.
Grown.
Thank God it's not too early for that one.
I don't know if you saw the paper this morning. I kind of freaked out when I saw it because there's 19 properties listed. Then you take a look and 14 of them say under contract, pending, sold.
Wow.
Yeah. So Windermere is showing off that they've got inventory that they've moved, which is nice. But the thing is, right now, as Kathy said, we have in the real estate industry, a 6-month inventory is considered a balanced market. That's where you have just enough to meet the needs of the buyers and the sellers all at the same time. If you go to 7 months and above, that's considered going toward the buyers, because if you have a 9-month inventory, the buyers can pretty much negotiate because you've got more than what's readily moving. If you go below 6 months of inventory, then it's known as the seller's market, and the seller has control over what happens typically because of the lack of inventory. We have had for about the last 6 weeks or so anyway, about 18 days worth of inventory in Port Angeles. And that's, if you remember the idea, when you walked into the grocery store when the pandemic first hit and there was nothing on the shelves, that's kind of the way that things are going in real estate. We are getting properties on the market. I've had people out looking for homes in the 800,000s, and we get to one on the second day, and it's already got a contract in front of the sellers, and we're asked if we want to put in a backup. If you're under 350,000 and you're on the market for more than a week, there's something going on someplace. That's the way that the public is looking at it now. But that's pretty much it. We are way, way, way under. And some people think that that this is because of the pandemic. Well, it is, but at the same time, it's not. This has been happening for a while. In 2017, Stephen Swanepoel, who is known as the guru of statistics for real estate and forecaster, got together with a few other folks and they took a look at the national market. That's what he specializes in. And they were estimating that nationally, we need to have about 2 million housing units built per year in order to meet the demand. And they were indicating that this was going to be something that was not a one-year thing. It was going to be going on for a while because of the demand in real estate and in housing. Well, it's now 4 years later. We have record low inventories. And of course, when you have record low inventories, prices go up. And one of the reasons that we have that is because in the last 6 years, we have been building not 2 million homes a year, but 1 million. And so as of right now, we are way under on that. As far as Port Angeles goes, in Port Angeles, we were told that we needed to have 1,200 housing units by next year. We currently build somewhere around 45. This is not a bubble. The original bubble that we all think about is the one from 2005 to 2008. And that wasn't caused by a lack of inventory. That was caused by banks coming up with wonderful ways to qualify you to get a mortgage. They created an artificial demand. And by creating the artificial demand, a whole bunch of people who probably shouldn't have been getting into a house got into houses. And that, of course, followed up with the great repossession that we had for a long time. So this is not that. This is not an artificially created demand. What we have here is construction companies, according to Price Schiller, and all they do is study the housing market. They don't make any judgments one way or the other. A few years ago, they determined that builders had figured out that rather than build three $150,000 houses, you could get by with building a $450,000 house and come up with a slightly better profit margin and don't have to take as much time, spread over as many places, and deal with as much paperwork. So builders started building the bigger houses and not the entry-level ones. And in Port Angeles, give you an example, the average home is over 40 years old. The average home is 2 stories or a story and a half. And it's not designed as a lot of seniors would appreciate, with the ground floor master and open space so that there's a lot of light. So we have seniors who are not moving out of their houses that they lived in and that they've got paid off. Why should they move? They can't find any place that they want to go to. So they're not moving. And that means that families that are now growing to the point that they need to find a bigger place to be can't find a bigger place to be because the seniors aren't moving out because they can't find a place to downsize to. So the folks in the middle are expanding their homes, which is also taking contractors away from the home building. But what this all means is that you're getting millennials and young buyers who are not able to get into the market. And real estate is how our economy functions. It is the kingpin for people making an investment and garnering wealth in the American society. And as of right now, with the way that prices are going and the opportunity for getting into the market, prices are up, opportunities are down, and there's a whole lot of people that aren't able to get in. And by the time they're going to probably be ready to, there may not be anything there to buy. So how is this affecting Port Angeles? Well, Port Angeles itself is divided into a series of segments, and those are judged by voting districts. There are far more than what's here. Port Angeles, as far as we're concerned, goes from McDonald Creek out to Beaver. Forks is on their own MLS. They're actually on the Seattle one. But from McDonald Creek out to Beaver, right now, there are 18 homes. I mean, there are 32 homes last time I checked, about an 18-day supply at the current rate that we're doing. This is just the city proper. And so you can see I've marked the different segments here. It's not exact, but this is a ballpark idea. So rather than looking at just Port Angeles and doing things on average, I decided to take a look at neighborhoods to see what they were like. This is not the bubble. Okay, here we go. Okay, so how is this affecting us here? Well, here's the town divided up into the different blocks. And then I took a look, I went back, they were looking at, in 2017, what was going to happen in the next 5 years or so. So I went back to 2016, 5 years back, just to see what things were like then. And if you take a look on the left, you'll see the different neighborhoods. And this is the average price for a home that sold in 2016 in those different neighborhoods. This is what's happened 5 years later with average prices. You can see the appreciation. And this is primarily because of inventory and the fact that we don't have it. Give you more of an idea, this is the appreciation by neighborhood. So if you look at 724, that, by the way, is Gales Addition, or that area. But you can see that we've gone in everywhere from Bayview, which is behind Safeway. The houses that have sold there have gone up about 10%, but you've got areas that have gone up 72, 74. This is what's happening with the prices. When I first got here, I can remember joining the Realtors Association as a contractor. And I can remember somebody saying, yeah, this year's been really good. We had 6 houses sell for over $300,000. The average house right now in Port Angeles is selling for about 335. So, and the average family can still afford about 250. So home buyers are still in the market, and the virus has taught them a bunch of things. The ones we are seeing now have realized that there's no reason to stay in the city. As a matter of fact, if you live in Diamond Point and commute to Seattle, you have about the same commute time as somebody who lives in Everett. And with the fact that people can do things on computer now, a lot of folks have figured out that there's no reason to be out of the house. So we're getting people moving up into the area. Now, it's not a massive influx, but last month we had about 10 people move into Sequim and about 6 move into Port Angeles from the Seattle area. The folks that are moving in want larger homes. They want acreage or big lots. They want privacy. They want quiet, and they want a place where they can work from home, a designated office of some type. So what's that going to do for us on the horizon? Well, couple of things. You've got 85% of the boomers saying that they're not going to move out for the next 5 years. 68% of Generation X, which is the folks right younger, just below them, not moving out. So we don't have the inventory. So people are now looking at land. And as of now, this year, lumber has gone up 170%. The last time that they did a code change, contractors told me that it was going to cost about an additional $24,000 per house just because of the difference in the code. So again, we're still looking at a loss of opportunity for a lot of folks, but this is what we're down to. People are buying land because they don't have the houses. And so as one contractor told me, well, if you want a house built, I can build you one. It'll be ready for you by August of next year, if I'm lucky. And so are you, without any price changes. That's where we are. And the next 5 years, they were saying in 2017 that by 2023, we would be down to having virtually nothing left to sell. We're there early, and it doesn't look like it's going to be changing real soon. So bottom line is, if you have the opportunity to buy into the market, you're going to see, right now we're getting an appreciation of somewhere around 11 to 15% per annum in Port Angeles. And that's not going to change. If you've got somebody who's interested in getting involved in real estate, then now is probably the best time to be doing it, because prices are not going to be going down. And until we get infill taken care of, as well as a few other things, we're just going to have people. Right now, we have Coast Guard officers who are staying in RVs because we have nowhere else to put them. And that's just the way the things are going to continue. So that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions? I'll be happy to answer if I can.
Yeah, Doc, I got a question.
Yeah.
When you said that you had folks buying in Port Angeles and Sequim from Seattle, how do you know that? How do you know that?
I was talking to different realtors about who has been buying and talking about where the buyers are coming from.
All right. Okay.
I mean, there may be a few more here and a few more there, but those we know of.
So Doc, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How much is Airbnb affecting the real estate market in Port Angeles, and what's the city doing, if you know, to create affordable housing? Bend, Oregon went through this problem like 10 years ago. My father-in-law lives down there, where nobody that actually lived in Bend, because they were service jobs mostly and hospitality jobs, could even afford a place to live. And it seems like we're getting very, very close, if we haven't already hit that point.
Yeah, the city has gotten stricter about where they will allow Airbnb. Airbnb has definitely taken a chunk out of the housing market because people are buying as an investment. People are also buying rentals as investments. And so we are, we don't have the inventory for people to move into, you know, their own home. We are getting very close to like resorts where, you know, if you go down to some of the resorts along, I was down in one in Oregon a couple of years ago, and I looked at somebody, supposedly the best pizza place in the world, highly rated as the best in the United States and probably one of the best internationally. And I looked at the owner and said, "So what's your house like?" He said, "I live 30 miles away. I can't afford this town."
Right.
You know, we're getting that way. And as far as the city goes, we have a member here who describes the city as the great battleship, and they are. One of the things that they said that they were going to look into about 16, 18 months ago was the idea of changing infill by saying that an accessory dwelling unit does not have to be 50% of the size of the main unit, because in Port Angeles, if you have to do that for an accessory dwelling unit, you're looking at an accessory dwelling unit that's about 400 square feet. And who in their right mind wants to buy a 400 square foot house, you know, or to live in one? City hasn't done anything. And when pressed as to why, they said, well, we have to redo the codes and the regulations. So they've started a committee to go ahead and do that. Who knows? You know, we've run out of places. It isn't a matter of when, it's here, you know, and the city's not doing a whole lot in order to help get more places to live. And until they recognize it as a strong need, we're probably not going to get a whole lot done. They did change a couple of the things where if you apply and you're building fourplexes or better, so apartment buildings, they will give you tax breaks. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of developers that are going in and building condos and apartment buildings. So we still have a lot of folks that do just single family. And right now they're not building single family. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, affordable housing from a rental standpoint is one thing, but from home ownership, which, as you talked about in the beginning of your talk, is what drives the economy and actually starts creating wealth for people. It seems like the housing market in Port Angeles and Airbnb and people being able to buy rentals is just increasing the wealth gap exponentially in our community. And is there a way to fix that? I mean, we can't control how much houses are selling for, but how do we go about making home ownership a reality for a lot of our middle class and young families in the community?
Again, it's a matter of supply and demand. If we had a developer come into town and say, okay, I'm going to take this on and do it. We had somebody years ago who started a project at the top of Laurel and got everything laid out with all these different size lots and all these things that they were going to do. And they called it, I think it's called the Valley Estates or something like that. And there are something like 68 lots up there. So far, one has been developed. That's it for the entire area. It's owned by a consortium in Bellevue that has real estate holdings, and they're just holding it. They haven't done anything with it. They've got an agent who's trying to sell the individual lots. But until we have people that are willing to come in and build, pardon me, we have no way of doing anything with it. And even when we build, then it's a matter of trying to find a way to make it affordable. And I was talking to a builder last year, and he said, what kind of houses do we really need in this community? And I said, entry-level homes. And he kind of looked at me and laughed and said, okay. No interest whatsoever, because it's easier for them to build the bigger houses. So it's almost as if we're going to need government to step in and say, okay, here's some kind of a stimulus in order to get things going, because real estate is a supply and demand, kind of like the stock market. So if people are buying it up as fast as it's getting on the market, there really isn't a whole lot we can do, because sellers are going to say, hey, I can raise my prices. Now they can only raise so much. You know, you can't go nuts, but I just sold a 3-bedroom, 1-bath 1,058 square feet in the center of town for $258,000. That was considered a bargain. That same house, 5 years ago, well, actually 7 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer than that, was about 170. So that's where we are. We're outpacing, the market is outpacing the population. And there's really not a whole lot that we can do about it because there's nothing there.
So
Okay,
Don,
question.
what's an average closing time?
We're still doing the closing at about 45 to 60 days because most of the closing takes place with inspections and then the banks doing their stuff with the appraisers. And appraisers are busy as everything right now because people are actually refinancing their houses to be able to repair them or to expand them. And so, I've called for appraisers and had them take 2-3 weeks before I could get the appraiser in. And that, of course, means that the closing can't happen until after the appraisal comes back. So 2 to 3 weeks to get it, then another week to put it together, then it has to go into underwriting. And then, so right there, you're looking at it easily 30 days just for that part of it. So 45 to 60 standard closing days on the market. 5 years ago, we were on the average days on the market was about 85. So just about 3 months, which was considered okay. Now it's about a month and a half, but that's overall. Some properties are going to hit and be gone the next day. Some are going to hit and be there for a couple of months. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but when you only have so much to choose from,
Right.
like I said, it's like walking into the grocery store and only seeing 5 things on the shelf. You don't really want any of them, but which one's going to do? And that's what a lot of people are looking at right now.
I have a question, Doc.
Yeah.
So obviously you're centric in our area. You have a lot of information about our area, but I kind of have a feeling and have been sort of told that this really isn't just a Port Angeles problem. It's kind of a nationwide problem.
Right.
What information do you have? I mean, do you concur with that? Do you have?
Yeah, according to NAR, right now, well, like I said, Swanepoel was saying that we needed 2 million units a year. They've been building 1 million units a year nationwide. We're doing the same thing here that's going on. I'm talking to people in Woodinville. I'm talking to people over in the Carnation area. Carnation's just going bang, everything's because people are moving out of the cities where it's so expensive and they're moving into other places. I have a naturopathic physician who wants to move into this area. She also has 6 kids. And so she's looking for a 5 to 6 bedroom house. We don't have them, same thing is going on. I've got people that are moving into other areas and they can't find anything. They're in the same situation we're in. And a lot of folks, it's compounded because they can't quite afford to move until they sell their house. But as soon as they put their house on the market, if it sells, they don't have anywhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a balancing act of trying to get a seller to recognize that, yes, I want to buy your house, but I need to sell mine first.
Yeah,
And it's not going to be a problem selling mine, but also then you have 2 houses that are supposed to be simultaneously closing.
Yeah.
And that can complicate just because it's not just a one-shot deal.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. Like when just moving locally here for us, we sold our other house in like 3 seconds, and then they were both closing. But it's like, this one was weird, the farm and all that stuff. So the mortgage people are like, oh, I don't know, it's a farm, and it was like, on nails forever,
Yeah, and this is happening whether you're looking at Ohio, or Arizona or Idaho. Matter of fact, we're actually getting a whole bunch of people from Idaho moving into Washington State because they're finding that it's actually slightly cheaper here than it is over there in some of the borderland towns. So this is not us. This is everywhere.
Yeah, my daughter just finished buying a house in Florida, and same thing there. I mean, nothing available, and the house they bought, they had to jump on immediately, and very tight market.
Yeah, we are actually seeing in places like Seattle and here. I had one deal that went south for my buyer because the other buyer said, no home inspection. I don't care. when you're spending over $700,000 on a house that was built in the 1970s, that's a risky proposition. But people are doing that. Some people are waiving appraisals. And, you know, there's even new tactics coming up for people. For example, one of the things that people used to do was what's known as an escalation clause. You know, Scott, you come to me and you say, I'm going to buy your house. I know that there's other people interested. So I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and pay you what you have for list price. And if anybody goes above me, I will beat their deal by $1,000 up to X amount.
Yeah,
Well,
we did that.
yeah, and that sounds all fine and dandy, but what happens if you don't appraise for that? So, you know, if I have it on the market for 250 and you'll say that you'll pay me 275, and the appraiser comes in and says the house is worth 262, either the deal's dead or I drop my price. So it, you know, complications there. What buyers are doing now in order to not run into that is they're saying, okay, I tell you what, I'll give you the full purchase price and I'll cover your closing costs. That doesn't affect the value of the house, but that means that you as seller just got somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 probably worth of benefit out of the deal, and it's not going to affect the appraisal.
So Doc, I just talked with a friend who sold his place on Zillow, like
Yeah.
in 5 days. Are you seeing a lot of that, or?
We're seeing some people who decide that they want to try it themselves, but you know, that's kind of like extracting your own teeth. You could do it, but do you really feel qualified? You know, there are things that you can do inadvertently that could put you in a position of liability. So as somebody who has a limited legal practice, not just saying because I'm in real estate, but you really do need the protection of somebody who knows what's going on if you want to make sure that you can get things taken care of. You know, not only do you have to have the right forms and the right manners and all that, but what happens, some people have asked me for several years now, if I ever think that we're going to be replaced by an app. And my response is, we could be, but do you really want to be using an app when things hit the fan? Or do you want somebody who knows what's going on when things hit the fan? And they might, you know. So yeah, there are people who are trying to do it. Typically, if somebody's going on Zillow and they're not using a realtor, they either are trying to gouge or they're trying to sell something that wouldn't normally sell. And over 90% of the people who decide to try it by themselves end up saying, wait a minute, this is too much, and I'll get somebody who knows what they're doing.
So Doc, I got a question about the cost of building.
Yeah.
We built a really nice house 20 years ago in Pullman for $80 a square foot. It was amazing, just like the one we have now.
Mm-hmm.
When we were going to build up on Mount Pleasant, the prices were up to something like $250 a square foot.
Yeah.
And we ended up buying this much bigger home because it was cheaper than building a much smaller home up there.
Oh yeah.
Our daughter just bought a place in Wenatchee, kind of the same whole issue. Wenatchee's exploding, and talked to a guy there, and he said $380 per square foot. Now, on top of this, we have this crazy deal of all these people say they can't find a good job. Kevin Russell put an article in the paper here about 5 years ago, talking about how all these people in the trades can make $60,000 to $100,000, you know, without even graduating high school for the most part.
Yeah.
And they can't find people. They cannot find good people.
Right.
Because they're just, I don't know, interested in just sleeping on mom's couch and not having to wake up and get yelled at by a boss. I don't know. But it's really kind of fascinating to me that there's a lady that I worked with in the past, her husband was a contractor, and she talked about the boom days, you know, the early 2000s, and where they could just laugh and they could build a house for, you know, 300, but they just laugh and say 550 and people would pay it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's some significant margin and some significant profitability here, providing tons of jobs in all sorts of ways. People want to do tile or carpentry or, you know, whatever, and they can't find the people to do it. Although they say we can't find a good, you know, wage paying job.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. Whether you're talking about, I mean, I know somebody who got into welding, underwater welding, and he makes between $50 and $90 an hour. 5 years ago, he was unemployed. You know, I know somebody else is doing tile work, and same thing. There's a great demand, but people aren't stepping up to do it. There are companies out there right now that are willing to pay you to go to school to learn the trade so they can hire you once you're done. And until we get, that's one of the other things on the supply side, as to why we don't have the building going on, because there's very few people out there that are willing to work or that have the talent to do the work. But you're right, prices went up. We're talking now, and we used to think that $120 a square foot was a good basic home. Nothing fancy, just your standard, cookie cutter entry level kind of thing. That same cookie cutter entry level thing is now somewhere in the 220s, 240s a square foot. You start adding in finishes, and yeah, you're easily up into the 300s and better. And that's, again, in Port Angeles is kind of upsetting, because years ago we had a master builders class where we taught kids how to do the construction trade. That got phased out. So we don't have the kids going into the trades to be able to come back into the community and build the community. And this is where, like I said, it's a multifaceted problem. And I really don't see any way that we, the public, are going to get out of it unless the government somehow or other gets involved. And that may be through educational programs, or, through discounting some kind of things with contractors. I don't know, but that's it.
The tiny home movement, I think, is interesting. You see these houses all along the road now, and maybe that's part of the solution, is you just have a smaller place than you might have otherwise. Because the other thing that's interesting is when you try to get a contractor to do anything, you're lucky if they show up within a month or two, and then they do tell you, I'll get back to you in 4 to 6 months, whatever. So are tiny homes going crazy? I mean, at least you can pay for it today. You can have it there. You don't have to, wait forever. I know price per square foot's a little on the high side. But it's certainly a bit of a solution. I heard about one family went out and they sold a big place in Seattle, and they got 4 little tiny homes somewhere out, and each kid had their own wing of the home in a little central area, and they just loved it. I said, wow, what a great way to go.
Let me break in here really quick, guys, because we've gone over a time
I'm
here.
sorry.
Doc, if you want to stay on, if everybody wants to stay on and go ahead and continue with Doc, that'd be great. But let me go ahead and adjourn the meeting officially. And Doc, it was great. Appreciate you doing this. You brought up a lot of questions, and I appreciate the insight on it. So I know that the wife and I are looking at possibly selling in a couple of years, but we'll see what happens. But we're also thinking about downsizing. So anyway, let me adjourn the meeting. If you want to stay on, please stay on. Brian, you're going to have a heartache with that, or?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, Brian's good with it. So everybody, happy holidays, and
Happy holidays.
on January 8th, I'll keep in touch with email and stuff. So let me know what's going on.
Good luck
Thank
with
you
the
for the
surgery.
opportunity.
Thanks, guys.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
Brian,
holidays.
21.
Brian, you're recording this. Are we going to have access? I want to show my wife the spreadsheet that Doc
Yeah.
provided.
Yeah, I'm gonna post it up on YouTube. I just when Doc was starting, I got Joe's one done, and that'll be on YouTube and
Okay.
but back to this worker shortage, it's pretty interesting, because 2 of my boys that went into the trades, they didn't want to go to college, and they're working, and just showing up for work, they're skyrocketing to the top. One of them started out as a framer and actually started out doing insulation, and now he's assistant project manager at Anderson Homes. And they gave him a pickup, they gave him health insurance, they gave just because he showed up, and really he's just got a high school education. And the other one's working towards being an electrician and halfway to his journeyman, and same thing. It's just because people don't show up. That's so
Annually.
About 11 to 15 in Port Angeles. Yeah.
So if new construction is what we need, and home values are going up by 11 to 15% per year, do you ever see the banks reducing the liquid cash that you need to get in on new construction, where you have to have 20% down? I mean, it seems like having that kind of protection for the bank, and then we could talk about PMI too, and how unaffordable that is and difficult that is for people. But when it comes to new construction, because I've built a house on my own, and I'm getting ready to start building another one, and coming up with 20% down, or the 30% down that you need on the land to have a place to build, do you see the banks ever scaling back on that kind of what really amounts to protection for them?
Well, depends on the bank. If right now, if you're looking at new construction, there are only 2 local banks and 1 semi-local credit union that will lend on raw land,
Yeah.
just flat out land. Because to the bank, and Lori could chip in, she knows more about this than I do when on the financial side of it, but to the bank, it's a stronger liability. Because as tough as it is to sell a house, it is really tough to sell land. People look and either they like it or they don't. It's walk in, walk out.
You just said it wasn't hard to sell a house at all. It only takes you 18 days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, no, we only have 18 days of inventory.
Oh,
So
right.
there's not a whole lot out there. But I'm just saying that when it comes to a house, people are picky about what they buy. When it comes to land, they're even pickier. And so banks will typically want 25 to 30% down for land,
Right.
but only some banks will deal with it. Now, First Fed, for example, has a program where if it has power and if it has a septic or will have a septic within 6 months, and if you're going to be building, then they have what they call their smart loan program for building a house. A lot of banks won't even go anywhere near that. And when it comes to new construction, though, they're a little more open to the idea. And it just depends on the bank and how they qualify. It also depends on, that's pretty much it. If you have, my brother, for example, down in Oregon, financed his house through a credit union. And he has it as an interest-only loan, but at the same time, it's only a 5-year mortgage. So he has the kind of business where at the end of the year, he gets a big bonus. So all during the year, he only pays the interest on it. And then at the end of the year, he makes a massive chunk against the principal, which the following year lowers all the interest, you know?
It just seems like that would be an avenue. I mean, obviously you still need the contractor to show up and be able to build, and you have to have that workforce, but you want to go build a $250,000 home and you've got to have either 50,000 in cash or you've got to have 50,000 in equity. And that seems like a good avenue for at least people in our community that live here and work here, young families, is a place where they can get a house that's affordable, except for they can't come up with the cash to do it. So they can go buy a $400,000 home and have to come up with 3 to 5% down.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. And it seems like that is a huge obstacle in the way of new construction is the amount of assets that you have to bring to the table in order to get the project off the ground.
Oh yeah. And that's one of the reasons why you don't see first-time home buyers, or a lot of them, trying to get in by building their own home.
Right.
They just can't afford it. Some are trying to go in by the route of manufactured homes, you know, just to have a place to live. And that's not as good as a site-built home.
Right.
They will appreciate, but nowhere near at the same rate. They do have programs that are available. They've been modified somewhat in the past few years. It used to be that if you went and took a class, then you could qualify for a $10,000 grant for the down payment of your home if you were a first-time home buyer. First-time home buyer is a phrase that we use in real estate. It's not a phrase that anybody in the public, nobody says, I'm a first-time home buyer, you know. They just say, I want to buy my house, or I want to buy a house. And so we think of those people a little bit differently than they think of themselves. But there used to be a program where you could get $10,000 as a grant. And if you stayed in the home for 5 years, the grant was forgiven. That isn't there now. Now it's something like a 1% loan on $10,000. But there are programs where people are trying to, in some ways, offset the possibility, the problems that you have trying to get into a home. And this is also why I haven't checked with them recently, but you get into places like Habitat for Humanity, and they've got a list of people who are just waiting for the opportunity to get in and build their own home. That's pretty much the only way that people are going to be able to build a new home and get into it, is through some kind of a program that's offset by the government or by grants from institutions.
Hey, Doc, great presentation, huh?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
You said Port Angeles was 11 to 15%. What is it in Sequim, out of curiosity?
I'd have to go back and take a look, but if I remember right, I've been seeing somewhere just slightly more, about 12 to 17 but Squim actually has a completely different market than we do. And not knocking Squim, but the average person in Squim is 72 years of age. So their real estate goes through a cycle far more often than we do here. You know, people move up, they move in, they move on, the house goes up for sale. And that happens on a fairly regular basis in Squim. So the inventory there turns over far more than it does here. And so you see more houses sell, and because of the fact that it's a different market where people have come up with their life savings. So they've made nicer houses or they buy nicer houses. You're also seeing a stronger market as far as the dollars go. You know, the properties that you find up in Bell Hill, you're not going to find in Port Angeles. You will if you go to like Red Deer and you know, Afternoon Hill and places like that, but not in the city or close to it. Squim is completely different. But Squim is also 4,200 people for the city. When I first got here years ago, 25 years ago now or something close to that, they had a sign on the east side of Squim. It said, "Welcome to sunny Squim, population 4,200. And the 4,200 was put on the sign with peel and stick numbers from the hardware store, which gave you a whole lot of faith in the population staying, you know, static. But years later, it's still 4,200. Most of the people in Squim live in the county. You know, Jim Jones made a remark a few years ago about the fact that Port Angeles is interesting because we lose about the same amount of people who move in every year. So when I first got here, there were 79,000 people in Clallam County, 19,000 in Port Angeles. As of today, there's about 79,000 in Clallam County and about 19,000 in Port Angeles. We're just kind of static. We have as many people as move in, move out, and that's just the way we are. But yeah, so the demand is there, and the supply isn't. We're stuck.
Well, great presentation, Doc. Much appreciated.
Well, you're more than welcome, Scott.
Got to run.
Anybody else?
Y'all have a great Christmas, huh?
I'm gonna give it a try, Squire.
Take care, huh?
Yep. Anybody else? All right, Brian, I guess we're wrapping.
Great presentation.